I think of retro games and I think of games I would potentially like to see a sequel, or that I think could potentially see a sequel, Gimmick is not on that list. Now, the reason being, this released back in 1992 to very limited fanfare and also very limited markets, having never released in the United States. Now, 32 years later, thanks to Clear River Games, the publisher, we're getting a sequel to Gimmick titled Gimmick 2. And this game employs a lot of the same mechanics as the original, but modernizes it in a way that I think is a bit more player-friendly than the Famicom original. You will again take on the role of everyone's favorite little green toy. The story is strictly told throughout the opening cutscene and the ending. There's no story provided throughout the game as you play through the levels, so rather than try to explain it to you and give you an understanding of what is the story, I think it's better to just show you, so here you go. Did you get that? Good. So now in Gimmick 2, you'll have the same abilities as you did in Gimmick 1. You have a jump, it's very momentum based, and you have a star that you can conjure up and throw. You can jump on this star, and you can also use it to activate switches and eliminate certain enemies. It bounces around and eventually loses its momentum, so this is an aspect of the gameplay that if you've never played the original, will take you a little bit of getting used to. In Gimmick 2, it feels more like a cerebral type of platformer. It's not quite a puzzle platformer, but most of the game will require you to put on your thinking cap and figure out how to traverse each section without meeting your demise, how to best manipulate certain platforms or move through traps and enemies to reach the end or the end of that section you're playing. The game is broken up into 6 fairly large levels that will take you at least about 20 minutes, unless of course you're a speedrunner, and each of these areas has tons of secrets. There's unlockable cosmetics in 4 or 5 different types of them, and then there's also hidden items, which are not only hidden, but also hidden behind a challenge area, which these are incredibly difficult. And so, if you want that best ending, be prepared to have your skills put to the test. Each of the 6 areas has very atmospheric music, done by the very talented David Wise. The graphics are very nice to look at. They're very colorful and whimsical, but don't let this fool you, because the difficulty is quite high, even on the lower of the 2 difficulty settings. Now, on the lower setting, you have 5 hit points. On the Gimmick difficulty setting, which is the equivalent of the original, you only have 3. I played through on the assisted difficulty, and I can't even begin to imagine how much more trouble I would have had clearing this game through to the end if I had played on the Gimmick difficulty setting. Seriously, the first few levels, they give you plenty of time to get acclimated with the way it controls and the mechanics, but once you get to about level 4 or 5, it really ramps it up and starts to punish you and requires almost absolute mastery of its mechanics in order to proceed. Now, over the course of the game, there's not a ton of enemy variety, and some of the mechanics are reused from the original game, which is perfectly fine, but it does introduce some new areas and some new ideas that I found to be a lot of fun. And I think that's the key here, is that I didn't really enjoy the first Gimmick game very much. This one, though, I had a blast with, and I burned through this whole game in about one afternoon. It's a few hours long, but if you try to get all the secrets, cosmetics, and unlock 100% completion, you'll be busy for much longer because all of these things are typically very difficult to reach and very difficult to earn. When I finished the game, I was around 61%, I believe, and I would say it probably took me about 4 hours or so to play through and to defeat the final boss. And that's another aspect of the game that I think is really well implemented, is the bosses. They're fun, and they each have their own attack patterns and weaknesses, and again, are a bit more cerebral as you have to figure out the best way to defeat them. You can't just throw stars at them and stand there and expect to win. So if you decide to play Gimmick 2, keep in mind that this isn't just a mindless platformer that you go from left to right, stomp on some enemies, collect some coins, reach the end, and you're done. This one will consistently require you to use your thinking cap and figure out solutions to traverse certain areas. And some of these areas, like I said, can get pretty difficult and require pixel perfect timing, not just with your jumps, but manipulating the environment as well. Overall, I think Gimmick 2 far exceeded my expectations. Having not been the biggest fan of the original game, I was cautiously optimistic about its sequel, but I left both surprised and delighted by the outcome. Revisiting areas to try and acquire the secret items that I might have missed is pretty simple, because there is fast travel. There's these little creatures with backpacks that wave a flag that you can use to fast travel between in each of the levels to reach areas that you might want to check and see if you missed anything. Now, keeping track of what you missed and where it is, that's not something that's tracked easily for you, so it's ultimately up to you to figure out on each level. But the option for fast travel is a nice touch. The game saves pretty frequently as well, so don't expect to lose progress if you have to go and play this in short bursts. Gimmick 2 is a game that's easy to recommend. I had a lot of fun with it, and it's one that I'll most likely come back to from time to time, see if I can collect some of the things that I might have missed, because these secret areas are where a lot of the challenge comes into play. It has meaningful boss fights, great soundtrack, great visual style, and a cute but brief story. I appreciate you watching my review of Gimmick 2. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you found this helpful, like the video, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. But until next time, have a good one.